How's it going, guys? So I'm Chris, and this is Danny, and we're the moderators for this Latin American panel. And we're the co-hosts of The Crypto Show, which you can listen to locally at 90.1 FM or thecryptoshow.com. You can live stream us there and check out our archives. We actually broadcast from here yesterday. It was a pretty good show. Anyway, we have a great group of panelists with us. And I guess, Danny, why don't you start us off?
Well, we can just have them introduce themselves. We can start with Helena.
Hi, I'm Helena Margarito. I'm from Brazil. I'm a partner at a law office specializing in internet and new technologies. I'm a co-founder of the Brazilian Bitcoin Foundation, and also I have been mentoring some Bitcoin-related startups in Brazil.
Hi, I'm Guillermo Peña from Honduras. I lead the Leutera Foundation. It's a free market think tank in Honduras, and we do public policy oriented, mainly free market, obviously, and we've been trying to open up the door for cryptocurrency technologies.
Hello, my name is Pablo Gonzalez. I'm a founder and CEO of the first Mexican Bitcoin exchange, and we're also a Ripple Gateway. So we're trying to develop infrastructure for remittance and cross-border payments over there.
My name is Jose Rodriguez. I'm from Mexico City. I'm a partner at Unicent, which was the first Bitcoin exchange in Argentina. We're also currently now in Mexico. And I'm also part of StartJoin, that is a crowdfunding platform that accepts cryptocurrencies. And I co-founded Peso Digital, which was a proposal we made to the Mexican Central Bank to incorporate blockchain-type technology into the payment systems in Mexico.
By the way, if anyone backstage can hear me, we could use another mic for the panelists, if possible.
Okay, Helena, we were talking about the government corruption, how Bitcoin and blockchain would help with government corruption in Brazil.
Yeah, well, actually we have been doing some brainstorm, the four of us, Danny, on what we should bring today to this panel. And we have been hearing in the last panels and the last discussions here, all the uses of the blockchain, how it could help, how it could be a way to make 100% trackable transactions. And this basically relates to a problem that is really common to all of us in Latin America, which is corruption. I'm not so sure how many of you have heard about the Brazilian last scandal on the Petrobras, which is basically the biggest public company in the country. Basically, we have now in Brazil a situation that the corruption is in every level of the government, in every level of publicly traded companies. And it's pretty hard for one to track the money that came from one to another and at which title. Why was that paid for and where is the money? That's pretty hard to find. So basically, blockchain, if used, if the concept was adopted, I know this is kind of utopic or kind of a dream to think about it, but at least in for a tiny moment, if we consider to adopt something like the blockchain for the transactions, all the transactions could be trackable. We could always see the origin of the money and who it came from, who it goes to, and this could make a way for corruption to be not at all feasible and not at all practicable in no terms, because you could always see what's the origin of the money. Basically, what a blockchain does to the transactions that are processed in it is to stamp the transaction. So basically, I know, at least on the public key, on the public side of it, who it came from, who it goes to, and all the transactions that happen all the way from the very beginning. Actually, this is my personal opinion. I'm not so sure if governments at all will be interested on doing that because corruptors are there. Let's be honest. This is why they are not interested in politic or tax reforms at all, because they are the ones who are benefited from it. But this could be a great way to bring transparency to countries that urgently need transparency to get bigger, to stop being developing countries and being developed countries.
I'd like to add just a little bit on this. One part of the corruption in Latin America is obviously on the financial transactions, the budgets parts, but there's one part that's, I think, fewer people look at, including the auditors inside of the country, and that's local registries, land registries, title registries, the different types of titles. I mean, just a really ridiculous example, Honduras for the last 3 years did not put out any license plates. So there was about a quarter of all vehicles going around had no license plates, which makes it for a very complicated process if you're trying to keep any control on just basic traffic. Let's not say the problems that we've seen with a lot of title manipulation. And when you do, the problem with title manipulation with land on land contracts is that once that risk is immediately transferred over to the banks, that risk has to be distributed between all loans, and that is, I would say, one of the bigger reasons why we have, 17, 18% on home loans, which just gets the economy stuck all over the place. If you were able to solve a couple of these problems, we could definitely go down 4 or 5% just by fixing registries, which is another type of corruption.
One of the... Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, like Elena mentioned, like one of the biggest problems is that the transparency, they're not interested in doing it. And also, once there is an open case of corruption, there is collusion, so there's no prosecution. So they don't go after the people that are inside of this. And who needs the most transparency, for example, Latin America, that is one of the worst problems is corruption, is the same government. And they are the ones who also control the prosecution and also the laws. And that is something that is making Latin America go steps backwards instead of forward. And for example, I have had the unpleasant experience working in stockbrokers and banks of seeing the frauds, how easily 1, 2, or 3 people can get colluded and modify or cancel or alter bank statements or do things that there shouldn't be happening anymore. And blockchain technology could help avoid this.
Yeah, and just to complement, this is something that we have been discussing in the regulatory panel here. The blockchain makes it possible for transactions and other types of contracts, etc., to be trackable and immutable. So basically, nobody can change it, which actually is a great way for people to actually audit. And I think that instead of talking, all we get in Latin America actually is bad press on Bitcoin. So Silk Road, everything that's empty gox, hackers, etc. Instead of focusing on the bad point and the bad press, we should try to, and actually that's one of the missions of the Brazilian Bitcoin Foundation, try to bring to the press how good it could be and how that could help Latin America overall to get a step further.
Okay. Next, we can talk about remittance. I've been a roofer here for 27, almost 28 years, and so I've worked with a lot of people from Mexico and Central America, and they run into a lot of problems trying to send their money back home, where they're basically getting raped by Western Union on this end, and then again on the other end to receive it. So, Jose and Pablo, if you can talk about, you guys have exchanges. I mean, how can we set something up where people can send their money back without being, taken advantage of?
Yes, as you mentioned, all these services have a big markup and big commissions, and also very inefficient services. Like, I've used it just to know how they work. Sometimes you have to come back 2 or 3 times to see if they pass through their system Well, it should be immediate. And you can lose up to 10% of your money just sending money from the States to Mexico and exchanging it for Mexican pesos. And how important is it? Well, in Mexico is the second highest income in dollars after oil. So it's a very important, and there's families that depend on this money coming through. So if you can give them a solution through all this technology to have 10% more of their money in their pockets and actually developing a business locally or doing investments or giving money out to their families to develop the economy, this will really help them out to bring all the Latin American and the rest of the world, like Africa, into becoming developed countries.
Yeah, I want to mention a few things because we've been looking at this for 18 months and gathering data and all that stuff. And remittances through Bitcoin is a very romantic idea. It's, this is one of the first applications that's going to disrupt the MTO space, like the money transmission organization space. But it is not yet ready for the big flows. Just to give an example, like the average from the US to Mexico, it's 6 to 8% what they're charging, and globally it's 9.3%. And the flows coming from US to Mexico, they're $24 billion roughly a year. And it's just growing. It was declining, and 2014 it grew again as the US economy started to get back up. But, looking at that, if you're saying like there's $24 billion, can you move 5% of the remittance industry, like have it go through Bitcoin? You can't today because there's not enough infrastructure built yet. There's not enough liquidity. This is coming, we're trying to set up, the start for that to happen, but where it can really help, and it's something that we've looked at, it's the small payments. The other thing, the small payments and the other, like trying to make Bitcoin invisible for a lot of the immigrants, where you're sending money and it's US dollars to pesos, and it's better user experience, it's cheaper, and you don't really know that you're using Bitcoin, and you're working with some of the existing players to enable those cheaper fees. So that's possible now, and I mean, we have a platform right now that's called Saldo, and they're working on our exchange, and they're enabling bill payments, for example, and people paying electricity bills and things like that. And because you're settling real time, like you're buying Bitcoin here, you're selling Bitcoin to Mexico, you're selling it. So you're converting real time USD to MXN per transaction. It's enabling things that were never possible before. So, like he's had a customer that put in $5 and went and paid the electricity bill for his mother, and it was $3.60. So had $1.40 left, and went in and paid, topped up cell phone minutes for his mom as well for $1.40, and it cost him nothing, and the experience was so easy. So that was never possible before because you do a bill payment and they charge you $3, $4. Most bill payments are $10. Like the average of our remittance is generally like $100 to $200. So they're really small transactions, and they're hard for money laundering. So if we're able to like make Bitcoin indispensable for money transmission businesses, that's a good way to get regulation going, because it can really make really big efficiencies. And it's not only efficiencies, but it's efficiencies that have social impact on people that come and are working really hard to make a living. And
do you have any numbers? You heard a lot of negative stuff about drug money being sent over in dollars. What are the numbers of poor people trying to send small amounts of money to their family? Is there a statistic on that? Do you know?
Most, 200 to 300 what million? No, well, no, like the remittances, you're not really getting affected by the drug money. The drug cartels can go and smuggle a truck full of cash through the border. It's not the, and it's US dollars, which they're very fungible in Mexico. So most of the remittances that are going through Western Unions and MoneyGrams and all that, they're going through they're actually being tracked. You know, most of the money being sent is done through formal markets.
So those are small family.
There's more
people helping their
families and the
families
money
that are actually
laundering
being taken
opportunities.
advantage of by Western Union.
Yeah, they're almost nothing. So I mean, right now we have people getting Bitcoins, sending them to their families, selling them on Bitso, and they're getting spot rates, or better than spot rates if there's more demand to buy Bitcoin that day. But you cannot get mass adoption when you do it that way. It needs to be one experience for the consumers, and that's why we're encouraging existent players to build up on top of, you know, our platforms and things.
Next question.
Anyone else want to comment on that? Good, okay. So I'm going to address this to Jose again. Tell us about the penetration in Mexico of Bitcoin, how widely adopted it is, and also tell us about ways that we can further adoption, such as social media, using organizations like ChangeTip to send Bitcoin over social media.
Yes, social media definitely is very important. Most of the communication, for example, that I've seen, and when I found out, for example, when I went to Argentina, that it was one of the most active communities, it was through Facebook. So there wasn't many things going in Mexico over a year ago. He still didn't have his platform, I still didn't have mine. There wasn't any, over a year ago, there wasn't any companies besides local Bitcoins where you could buy and sell Bitcoins. So when I started getting more involved in Bitcoin, that's when I decided, like, hey, I want to go and see what's going on in Argentina and meet all the people that are over there. That's where I met my partners of Unicent and brought over the platform. But in this last year, from not having any platforms, now there are 3 exchanges and 1 Coinbase-like service. And there are people that are now building, like he mentioned, Saldo MX, and to send Bitcoins and other services on top of Bitcoin to use it as an alternative. And well, you have recently seen some big Bitcoin companies like Bitcoin Reserve adding Mexican peso and the Indian rupee to their options. BTC Jam has also, that is a peer-to-peer lending platform, has also translated to Spanish. Besides, they only had Portuguese and English. Now they translated over to Spanish to get into the Latin American market. And you're seeing all these services bringing out. And also, for example, in the crowdfunding platform that I'm part of, StartJoin, we also want this market. So I started listing projects and bringing people in, but you also need to have the translation and give it some uses. Like when you can find that you can get a project funded through Bitcoin and people can fund you from all over the world, and you will probably not be getting that money from a bank. For example, if you go to Argentina or even in Mexico, some interest rates are really high compared to developed countries. And even having those rates, like you go to Argentina, you go to Venezuela, even with those high rates, they won't even lend you money. So bringing all those financial options to Bitcoin and helping people develop their businesses and having a better future is what's bringing in. And also, as you mentioned, getting events, and we have done some events in Mexico. We try to at least go once a month to universities and talk and bring people in. And also, we have noticed in the media, like 2 years ago, no one was speaking about Bitcoin. Right now, at least like every 1-2 weeks, a mainstream newspaper or reporter is contacting us to know what is going on with Bitcoin and how it can help develop. They're not looking anymore like, oh, Silk Road, money laundering, on drugs. They're looking at real financial options for people to develop.
Yeah, and just to complement also, in Brazil, in the past 2 months, we have been getting not as much of a bad press, but I guess it was like 2 weeks ago in the biggest magazine of Brazil called Veja. They have addressed, actually it was a one-page news saying that even though Bitcoin in the past was related to illegal activities, etc., 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 like half of the way talking about it. Then they said, okay, now JP Morgan is looking that as a financial asset. They are creating a fund to invest on it, etc., etc. So it is funny because now they have realized that there are big people looking into it, and they are trying to figure out why, because all that they know is the bad press.
Well, just want to add quickly, and something about journalists, they're starting to realize the amazing opportunities that Bitcoin and has to create social impact. Financial inclusion, remittances. There's many different areas where, if you look at the possibilities of a country in Latin America, they're greater than first world countries. Like United States, it does need Bitcoin because there's many problems in different areas, but developing countries need Bitcoin more. Like yesterday, listening to Wanda's talk about Africa, for example, some of the challenges. It's true. Like developing countries are the ones that need Bitcoin the most, and I think that there's entities in government and things that are actually working, some of them, and they're realizing some of these economic benefits that can bring to these countries.
That's just real quick. That's a really good point. Obviously, every country and every person throughout the world could benefit from adopting Bitcoin, but it's kind of, I don't know if ironic is the proper term, but basically, as bad as our economy is here in the United States, unfortunately, it's worse elsewhere. And more importantly, as bad as our monetary policy is here, you go to a country like Argentina that I recently visited to see family, and they have 100% inflation per year going on. And so, as terrible as that is, the silver lining is it's driving adoption of things like Bitcoin to overcome those, that loss in purchasing power.
Yeah, and actually Argentina, even though it's a small country, the volume of transacted Bitcoins is 3 times more than the volume of Brazil.
Wow.
Yeah. Even though Brazil has a Facebook community of 12,000 people, the community in Argentina is also pretty big, and they have been adopting that way much more, especially because they have restrictions on sending money abroad, buying US dollars. So, for instance, there was an Argentinian person having lunch with me once in Brazil. She wanted to pay the meal with her credit card. That was not possible. The credit card just refused the transaction because they are not able to spend more, I guess, than $200 US abroad.
There's a time lapse involved in that transaction, which stops them from wanting to take it because by the time the transaction happens, the currency is not worth what it was.
Yeah.
So,
that's a good point.
I just realized something. We're talking about a lot of problems in Latin America, and like, oh, this is bad and this is bad, but no, these are amazing opportunities. It's actually really positive to.
With Guillermo has one with free trade zones in Honduras.
So a lot of what we're talking here is because of regulation. So monetary controls, exchange controls, banking difficulties, all this stuff. So that's one of the opportunities that we saw that we had open with the free zone legislation. We start looking around who's doing what, who's doing better in the area to attract Bitcoin companies or basically tech innovation. And we saw Panama was taking a lot of that. A lot of people know that putting a company in Panama, it's fairly simple, tax friendly. Several companies have resettled or left the States, left a bunch of Canada, left other places to set up shop in Panama, moving all of their people there. And yes, quality of life in Panama City it's not that bad. It's a happy place. You use dollars everywhere. You have a direct connection to like 40 flights a day to any city in the States. But it's the regulation part that really makes them feel comfortable. Otherwise, it wouldn't go. So we said, how about we just first thing we want to do is try to leapfrog Panama with their regulations and make it even simpler with that. How about we use that as our main model, also looking at what Singapore and what Isle of Man are doing and say, they still have to go to Congress. The way the zones are set up, we don't have to go to Congress to do the reform and to put the regulation in. So we want to create the environment that opens up the possibility to maybe allowing a lot of the companies that are in this sphere to forget about that problem and just start developing and deploying their products.
And also, one thing for highly regulated countries, such as the other ones in Latin America, such as Brazil, Argentina, I'm guessing Mexico as well, is that if they realize how the technology works, maybe, I hope, they are able to see that instead of helping people to skip from regulations, using Bitcoins or using any other type of cryptocurrencies that have a public ledger could help on tax evasion, actually against tax evasion, money laundering, and many other illegal activities that nowadays, because you can put money in your pocket and just travel away to Switzerland and open a bank account, an anonymous bank account there, you're able to do. If it is, of course, not mandatory, but somehow, I don't know, enforced or incentivated that people use those technologies, tracks like that could be much easier, and those could actually help highly regulated governments instead of go against their rules.
And let me just add one for this. So one of the things that we've seen with the Honduran government in particular, but is that you have to, when you're saying do this reform because it helps you, it's always like it's a permanent, you have to sell it in a way that's good for them. I mean, the politicians can only think as far as the next election, and we know that. And you have to feed that. They're not going to think of saving the world because they know that if they don't deliver the results right now, they won't be there to do it. So back to like the land title thing is the way I propose it to the government is you guys should look into this, because if you do this, interest rates go down without you having to get in a fight with all the banks. And you're able to open up the door for housing that moves the economy. I mean, I'm not one that proposes that everyone should own a house, but they do. But if they do that, that also helps out companies to take out loans because the loans are lower. So, but they're interested in housing. I'm interested in having companies that stop working for the banks, because you just cannot run a company at 18% loans. And when you don't have a stock market, you don't have a big equity market, then you have one option, or well, there's two options. You can go to the banks, you can go to the loan shark, and which one do you want to do? But it's when we're talking to these regulators, you have to talk to them in the right way. You cannot propose pies in the sky. It has to feel real, and it has to be quick. And the opportunities, when they open up for very short times. So you have to move quick. Once that window's open, you go in full force.
And just to finalize, actually complementing what you said, interest rates in Brazil are the biggest ones in the world. We are talking about 200% a year. I'm not so sure if you realize what it is to have twice as much as you own because you were not able to pay like an electricity bill for some reason. And this is pretty bad. This is actually been struggling, especially the middle class, the one that the government's so proud to say that they have created, they have increased. Everybody's drowning into loans and loans and loans. So this could also benefit the whole economy itself.
Just out of curiosity, when you say 200%, is that like the base rate on government debt, or is that credit cards, or like?
If you have your bank account, if you have a limit on your bank account, so if you spend more than you own, you have a special credit there that it keeps rotating. Like for the whole year, the tax rate, the interest rate on that is 200% a year or so. It can be more,
right?
Depending on the bank.
Pretty excessive, yeah.
So it looks like we have about 7 minutes. Should we open up? We have one more question, but we could just go ahead and open up to. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
Or, do we get a mic on him, or oh, there's a mic there? I see.
There's no mic.
No mic.
Oh,
thank you. The price is right. Come on down.
Hey, Tony,
Thank
go
you.
ahead and be next. Tone.
Okay, this question is for all the panel. You were talking about the financial aspect of Bitcoin in Latin America, but what about the technical aspects? I mean, software development. It seems that Argentina is one of the countries that have more software development for Bitcoin, but what about the other countries?
Well, there's plenty of talent down there. There's plenty of talent that is completely capable of developing amazing solutions. The problem is not the talent, is that there's, and it's part of the last question, which there's not that much venture capital investment going into some of the initiatives going into Latin America. There's State of Bitcoin CoinDesk report, and the last one, I was looking at it a few days ago, and I saw the graph where how much money is coming to different regions, and you see like US and Canada at 64% or something, and the one with the least amount of venture capital funds, it's Latin America. So it's 1% of all the venture capital funds are flowing to Latin America, and it's a problem because the startup ecosystems behind in our countries where there's no real investors like playing by the book, like playing by the rules, and it's very abusive. It's still decades away from like what you have in Silicon Valley. So that's one of the issues that's coming from developing new things.
So you see that problem happen all over the place. One is the lack of options to access capital. When there's few options, you can play the game, which is sad. But what you end up seeing is a lot of good developers being go into competition, go into hackathons for very small prices, or for very small prizes, and the hackathons will be sponsored by a gigantic mobile company, and what they end up doing is, whatever the winner project, they bring him in, and it's a very low pay. I mean, I think it's unfair for a lot of the developers that the way they're just out of the market because there's a lack of access to capital. One of them, again, is the problem with regulation. Investors do not feel confident coming into these areas where they do not trust the legal system, but then you wonder, but why are they going then to Africa why are they going there sometimes to India, where the bureaucratic process is very complicated? But I don't know if it's bad press or if it's just a really big opportunity for people who want to come in. And I think that we could use one or two firms that would come in and set the pace and would really turn things around.
So we have a limited time.
Actually, let's get to the next question real quick. Sorry.
I actually hope there's no IRS agents in the room when I ask this. So is there an optimal country where someone can just buy Bitcoin in America, fly down to a Latin American country, and then sell them there for cash, not looking to make a business, just a nice free trip to Latin America, and come back voluntarily in one piece?
You mean like you did a couple of weeks ago? I did it too. We bought our pesos from Jose. Remember?
I think you can. There's great places all around Latin America you could do that. I mean, I don't know. That depends on every country, also on their exchanges and how easy it is to get, and hopefully you won't get a horrible price for your Bitcoin. But
we actually did this a few weeks ago. We went down and cashed our Bitcoins in for pesos and had a grand old time at Anarchapulco.
Yeah, like, well, you said, like, you can do like local exchanges here in Mexico, no problem, like in cash, not very big amounts. But then again, you go back to countries like Argentina, and you will get a good exchange rate for your Bitcoins, and actually you would get what they call the blue market rate, which is what the government calls a black market. So there's the official rate, which has like 50% less of the market value because all the exchange rates are controlled by the government. You go to Argentina with your Bitcoins, you're going to get paid well for them. Or you go with your dollars, you're going to get paid for them well. If you need to know people from the communities to do it. Don't do it in the streets.
Do we have time?
So we have time for one more.
One more question?
Yes.
All right. You had mentioned the possibility of remittances and those things and transferring back into the local currency. We also talked about capital controls in places like Argentina, and Venezuela is what comes to mind, where you don't really have the option to go to U.S. dollars. And you also mentioned the fact that Argentina has more Bitcoin transactions. My question is you know, from the viewpoint on the ground where you are, how much of that is actually what we would call the dark web sort of thing, where they're not necessarily buying illegal things, but they're day-to-day necessities? Is there any of that where, as they're trying to get out of their local currency, which is being hyperinflated, where there's any actual person-to-person use of Bitcoin as a day-to-day currency? And if not, what do you think could be done to, instead of transferring to the local currency, to implement Bitcoin more of as an exchange on the ground level?
Most of the people do it for a legitimate business and as an alternative economy for what they have, especially in Argentina and Venezuela. If they keep their money, they only have one certainty. Day by day, it will be more. It will be worth less. So they do it as an alternative for their currency and to avoid all these capital controls that they have in their countries. And if you try to get a look at the exchange rates in Argentina, there's 3 and there's even 4 in Venezuela, and they're all over the place. Like, you cannot get like a stable rate. It goes up and down wildly. So either ways, like in the Bitcoin community, because they're trying to build up, for example, in Argentina, a legitimate businesses and legitimate economy, someone that was doing something illegal would be rejected from the community and left out. So they're trying to escape and to build a better future. So there is no room, like when this is so young and so vulnerable, to let those type of people in.
Thanks, guys.
Can I just compliment?
Oh, was that, you gonna hop in? Okay.
Yeah, just 1 second. Also, in Brazil, that I have mentioned personally, we have people that are acting 2 ways. First is buying the position of buy and hold just as an investment. And actually, big people have been doing it. People have invested lots and lots and lots of money on it because they do believe in the protocol. And also, some other people are buying in order to run away from the taxes that we have for international payments. We have a 6.38% plus the difference in the FX rate. So people, when they travel abroad, they just buy Bitcoins and they sell Bitcoins for the local currency. This way, they are able to save about 10%. And just to finalize also, Latin Americans are usually well known for being really creative. And this is actually due to Argentina. Many developers there have created, for instance, Mercado Libre, which is a huge platform. Mercado Pago, some other tech companies, and now since they are not able to create any more businesses there because of the bad political situation, they are going elsewhere to develop their businesses, and that also happens with Brazilians. So for instance, BTC Jam, since they were not able to operate their business model inside of Brazil, they went to Silicon Valley, they got funded abroad, and they're expanding abroad. So the perspective that we have for VC is that we have a bad regulatory framework that leaves everybody uncertain, but we are also working to have that more cleared for companies to be able to develop from inside those countries and go worldwide.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Elena. Please give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you guys so much.